Hey everyone, welcome back to Data and Donuts. My name is Aaron. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Daniel Miramontez. Today we're going to talk about planning. But before we get into our conversation today about planning, I'd like Daniel to share a little bit about himself with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Um, First and foremost, I'm very happy to be on this program podcast here today. I am Daniel Miramontes, and I am the Dean of Planning Research, Institutional Effectiveness Library and Technology at San Diego Miramar College. I know that is a mouthful. Try to get them to shorten the title, but they have not. I also serve as the San Diego Imperial Valley Regional Representative on the RP Group Board. I've been in IRPE now going on 14 years, all within the San Diego Community College District. So I originally started as a research and planning analyst back in 2008 and got promoted into this position in 2014. So I've been in this dean position for a little bit over 8 years now. One of my many passions within our field is planning. Not too many people like to say that because it gets into many different types and how do you do X, Y, and Z. But that's what we're here for today, to kind of demystify planning.
Excellent. So we'll jump right into this and to say, what is strategic planning?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Aaron. So, according to the Society of College and University Planning, you might also know it as SCUP, they define strategic planning as a deliberate, disciplined effort to produce fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what an institution is, what it does, and why it does it. I like to use that definition within my work of strategic planning here at the college, and I've seen other colleges use it as well. In essence, strategic planning is the institution's North Star. It defines the purpose and charts the direction of a college or district for a certain amount of years. Now, as research practitioners, we often see planning as something that is separate from our profession, but when in reality, it's part of who we are as professionals, and it's very important to realize that. So planning is something that is part of our professional identity. It's not separate from our professional identity. And I say that for a reason, because our colleagues, IRP colleagues, when you mention the term strategic planning, they cringe, like, oh, no, that's not me, right? But in order for them to feel comfortable with strategic planning, they need to be able to relate it back to something familiar, right? That's what my background in education is in psychology. And what I do know is that if people don't feel familiar, they're not going to engage with it, right? So how do we make strategic planning a bit more practical for the IRPE colleagues? Well, what I like to say is let's take a trip down memory lane, right? We've all went to grad school. And as researchers, we probably were exposed to some type of or level of training in the scientific method. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. In other words, we have some type of familiarity with the scientific method within our field. If we were to go back to the SCUP definition of strategic planning, it's both disciplined and deliberate, right? So what does that mean? Well, that means there's some kind of method to the planning madness out there. Likewise, the scientific method is a deliberate and disciplined structure of examining cause and effect relationships. So just as a scientific method is used as the context to produce results and make sense of them, strategic planning uses institutional context to make sense of institutional research and data. And that's very important for us to consider. So it's not far-fetched from what we do as research practitioners. In essence, they work together. Thus, when defining and charting the direction of the college, strategic planning must have some deliberate intent and disciplined efforts behind it in a structured format that moves the institution forward.
Excellent. And so now you start thinking about strategic planning, but then we throw to the next level of integrated planning. Can you describe that a little bit about how integrated planning works?
Absolutely. So strategic planning, when we think about it, is a process in of itself. Okay. And processes are usually linear, and we can think of that, a bit more practically. When you talk about integrated planning, researchers just run out of the room because it's a large beast. But again, if we start to look at it in a practical sense, it's not far from who we are as professionals. So according to the same organization, SCUB, integrated planning is a sustainable approach to planning that builds relationships, aligns the organization, and emphasizes preparedness for change. Okay. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean for IRPE professional and specifically to the context of your institution? Well, it aligns efforts both vertically, right? So from your mission statement all the way down to the day-to-day operations, and it aligns the institution horizontally across divisions, schools, departments, offices, and of course, processes. So integrated planning can really be thought of as an institution's comprehensive story of who they are as a college. And so just like the strategic planning process, we can break down some key components of integrated planning. And according to the SCUP definition, integrated planning is sustainable. Well, what does that mean? Well, with this approach, you build a culture of planning that is durable and brings to focus institutional progress based upon student equity and success. That's important to know that it's sustainable. It's also collaborative. Integrated planning engages all stakeholders across the institution. So everyone that has a stake in the institution is invested in the success of the institution. It's also aligned, right? Integrated planning aligns efforts across the institution, as I mentioned, up, down, and sideways. It links planning resources and to assessment of goals and initiatives, and to have resources that are needed to achieve the progress that can be measured. And also, it's change ready. Institutions with integrated planning processes are poised to respond to a volatile environment. And if the last 2 years haven't showed us anything, is that we live in a volatile world.
Excellent. And some follow-up questions. I see sometimes where institutions may have like a college plan over here and maybe some strategic plans over here and some initiatives over here. How do you braid that together? If you were given that scenario, say if they said, "Hey, we have all this stuff, Daniel, how do we get it together?" What would be your recommendation?
Well, my recommendation will be always to go back to basic, and that's to be mission driven, because mission driven is so important, right? Again, back to the strategic planning process. It starts with the mission. And with the mission, you can state your mission, whether it's in a strategic plan, all the way down to, let's say, maybe some type of a functional plan or even a program review, right? Or any type of initiative. That's how student equity started out as an initiative, but now it's being scaled up. But that also needs to be tied back to your mission. And with your mission, you're able to say, this is who we are as an institution, and we should be able to map that back to any kind of plan, program review, or an initiative in of itself. So always go back to basic, your mission statement, because that's who you are as an institution, to not just the people working within the institution, but to external stakeholders as well, whether it be the community at large that we serve or the students that come to us.
Excellent. That's a great follow-up. Thank you. And really looking at that, and I'm just following up my thoughts. a lot of the times when you have that mission centric approach, it really helps ground the work that you're doing and to, have those critical conversations or those open conversations to say, does this align with our mission? Is this the direction we're going? And I think those are key things because, sometimes we just want to do everything. It's exciting, it's cool, but is it what we're here for? Does it align with where we're going? Now we can always shift gears to say, hey, we need to go in a different direction. And that starts with your mission adjustment, really maybe reshaping your vision, your landing points, your destinations, and
Mhm.
even benchmarks along the way. And so a lot of the times, at least if I recommend with individuals looking to develop their master plans, their strategic type of plans is start with your mission, do a mission revise,
Yep.
and then start that off before being like, hey, we're just going to throw in these initiatives. Well, hold on. To what end? And I think a good point to draw attention to is when we think about mission, not so much mission, but goals and the other components is what's that ideal state? Where are we trying to achieve? And what does that look like? Because you may have a goal that's called, we want to increase success to what? By what? Right. And so
Hmm.
if we don't have clarity in that, it may not help with getting individuals in support of that. And it always goes of like, hey, we want to increase success, but why? Because our mission says, here's what we're here for, here's who we're going to serve, and here's the outcomes we're going to achieve. Increasing success will then reach these specific outcomes for the populations as identified. And so really being able to, like you said earlier, make it simple, crosswalk it back, and really bring those connection points together. And so with that said, my final question are, as we think about those connection points or those different aspects of planning, what are key components that maybe a strategic plan should have? What would you recommend?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So going back to the strategic planning as an example, I'm going to use the analogy I did with the first question in that using the scientific method as a structure to outline our strategic planning process, right? So again, going back to our grad school days, I know that might be traumatizing for some of us, but you're in a better space now. With the scientific method that we all learned, there's basic four components, right? Four basic components. You have your introduction that really looks at the background, literature review that informs your hypothesis. Then you move into the design phase, which is your methodology, right? You design the experiment to yield the results, your independent variable, dependent variable. Then after you run the experiment, you definitely want to run your statistical analysis to explore what you found. That's exciting, right? And then, of course, whatever you found, you move into your discussion. And so the discussion section is a reflection on the results that tie back to the hypothesis as either confirmed or not confirmed. And then you tie that back to the literature, right, that you started off with your introduction. The same thing can be said for the strategic planning process. So planning for professionals can build upon a similar structure, right? So let's say with your introduction, we often start with an external and internal scan, okay? Those scans are very much akin to the lit review. But instead of informing a hypothesis, you are informing your mission statement, your institutional mission statement. So indeed, you may be updating your mission statement, revising your mission statement, but that has to be predicated on your external and internal scans, right? That's very, very important. And when with your external scan usually looks across key areas of like economics, social, demographic, technology, political, educational. Your internal scan gives you your history, and that in itself is going to inform your mission statement. Okay, so that's very, very similar to the introduction of the scientific method. What about the methods section? Okay, that's what I like to call the operative. Might have to cut this one. That refers to the operational. Oh my goodness.
You're good. We'll
You need
take
to
a pause.
operationalize your mission statement. Okay. And so you need to break down your mission statement into goals and key performance indicators. This is similar to the methodology of an experiment. Your goals are basically the disaggregation of your mission statement into broad general statements of intended outcomes, right? Or results. Your KPIs as we're all familiar with as institutional researchers, are quantifiable metrics used to evaluate the success of an organization, right, of our institution. So you're really operationalizing or defining effectiveness for your institution, and you're going to measure the progress on how you're going to achieve those goals. Then you would move into your analysis section, or basically the data analytics and results. So you're going to be running data analytics to set benchmarks that guide intervention deployment. And of course, this is very similar to that part of the scientific method. So you set benchmarks, right? Both floor and aspirational benchmarks using data analysis. This will allow for a range to be set in measuring institutional performance. Based upon that, you can use that information to help set institutional-wide priorities. And when you set those institutional-wide priorities, now you're having a bit more practical and concrete reasons to develop and deploy interventions, right? So these interventions are going to address the priorities by setting key actions, areas of responsibilities, timelines, resources, and measurements. So they'll need to be linked back to your strategic goals that were identified. And then last is the implementation, right? This is similar to your discussion. So you want to be able to tie back intervention deployment evaluation to the institutional mission fulfillment, right? So this is similar of tying back your results to lit review. And you do so after you evaluate your specific interventions, and then see how that ties back to the mission in of itself.
Excellent. I think bringing that whole cycle through our conversation really opens kind of your mind of the implications and the work to be done, and then how you can tie it back to work that many of us have gone through and continually go through. And I think really tying that connection can help demystify, maybe take some of the pain points out of, oh no, I need to help write a plan. What does this mean? I need to lead this planning effort. So thank you for clarifying that. And I think to close out, I do have a bonus question. And my bonus question is, last season, we looked at what was your favorite donut for all of our participants and guests. But this season, we're going to build on that and ask, what's your favorite? What do you prefer? Not maybe favorite. What do you prefer, tea or coffee? And which brand?
Well, to be quite honest, in the role that we all play as, institutional researchers, and if you choose to move into the realm of planning, I'm telling you, if you are a tea person, you're going to move into coffee really fast. So I prefer coffee because it sustains me longer throughout the day, especially when you talk about systems thinking with strategic planning, integrated planning. So definitely, I love coffee. And then is there a particular brand? Not really particular, just what gets the job done. So I'm pretty open to any type of coffee.
That's awesome. No, thanks for that. And with that, thank you so much today for sharing your insight, sharing some of the work that's informing your work that you'll be doing statewide with planning. And I'll follow up with you more on that. And so thank you again, Daniel. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Aaron. Much appreciated.